Hey guys, welcome to this week's video. I wanted to talk to you all this week about starting your own comic. Now it probably sounds like a really simple concept, the idea of just starting your comic. I assume anyone watching these videos, or the majority are artists, they like to draw, and most of them are probably influenced a lot by comic books or manga or animation, movies, cartoon TV shows, things of those nature. So you probably have a really great affinity for storytelling and coming up with ideas and wanting to develop those into a finished comic book. Now, I'm not here to tell you how to create a comic book. I'm here to tell you guys how to start a comic book. There's a big difference, and I'm going to go through those step by step. As most of you know, I finally launched my webcomic Monkey Junk this Monday that just went, just a couple of days ago. And what most of you probably don't know is that story took me 5 years to put that whole idea together to a point where I was 100% not only with the storyline, but with also the art. Every book that I've done between those 5 years, to me, has been a stepping stone of getting to understand art, understand how to create comics, understand how to create stories, and putting all those elements together to a point where I felt confident to finally take my idea and make it a reality. Thankfully, I'm at a point in my life where it's all worked out and I can finally start that comic book. And I'm hoping this video will help you guys realize that you can do the same thing, and hopefully it doesn't take you guys as long as it's taken me to create the story that you're super passionate about. Okay, step number one, coming up with your idea. So developing the idea is probably one of the easiest things you can do in the process of creating a comic. Ideas come from everywhere. They come from music, they come from comic books, they come from TV shows, films, animations, and the life experiences, and all over the place. There's no one solution to where inspiration will strike and how motivation will push you to finally take those ideas and write them down. For me, my ideas generally come from listening to music, primarily. They also do involve comics as well, and all the other stuff that I mentioned, but for me, primarily is music. Especially listening to bands that have songs that are very story driven. So bands like My Chemical Romance, bands like Marilyn Manson and Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds are a few of my very favourites that I listen to very, very regularly, and they always create sparks to allow me to develop ideas based on the stories that they're trying to tell in their lyrics. So you've got an idea, the first thing you need to do is write it down. Sometimes I like to sleep on an idea. If I find that I really like an idea and I'm really happy with it, I will not write anything down. I'll leave it as is, leave it all in my head and let my mind just sort of brew on those ideas, go to sleep, and if I wake up the next day and that idea is still there, to me, and this is probably a silly thing for some people, but to me, I feel like that's a solid idea. If it's willing to stick around in my head long enough, then that idea is solid enough to build upon. If, say, the idea does go away and I forget about it the next day, then it probably wasn't that great of an idea to begin with. But it doesn't mean more ideas won't come. But most of the stories that I put together generally have started that way. And most of them, even though they've only ever had small audiences, have been given really great feedback. So for you, it's just a matter of finding out how to generate those ideas and what works best for you, what process works best, whether it's just sitting in your room listening to music or going for a long drive down the highway and blasting some music, or whether it's reading comics all day, or whether it's having a movie marathon and watching some of your favourite movies of the genre that maybe you want to work in. All these different things work well. It's just a matter of what's going to work for you. So have a play around, do different things, and get those ideas happening, and get your mind brewing, get that mind working for you to get your story ready. So now that you've got your idea, the next step you need to do is write it down. Whether it's putting it in a notebook, writing it in your phone, in your notes section, messaging it to a friend. Me personally, I use a Google Drive account. Google Drive account allows me to type everything on my phone, or I can jump onto my computer and do it. I have access to it wherever I go on a digital platform. So I use that primarily to write down my ideas and get developing. Now, there's no magic trick to writing down your ideas and developing those stories. For me, the best thing that works is writing a big blurb of everything that's in my head first. Once that blurb exists, generally my head becomes free again to start developing more ideas based on that idea. Then at that point, I start writing dot points down. Once I've got enough dot points, I'll probably leave it, come back to it another day and get those ideas brewing again and start playing around. When I started writing Monkey Junk again at the beginning of this year, I had all the notes that I had worked on for quite a while. I printed everything out and I took all my favourite bits and I put them into a new Google Drive document, and then I redeveloped it into a story that I was really happy with. As I previously mentioned, it took me 5 years to develop the story for Monkey Junk, so don't be afraid to spend a little bit of time with it. Nothing needs to happen straight away, and if you want a really strong story and you really want to enjoy the process of creating the world or the universes that are going to be involved in this story, take your time and enjoy it, because this process to me is one of the most fun ones, because you are just completely unlimited. You don't have the limitations of a finished script, you don't have the limitations of the drawing that has to go into the story. You can pretty much go anywhere you want with this and have fun with it. In saying that, you will need to be taking these ideas and you will need to be merging them all together into a coherent storyline that you can turn into a comic book. So the next step we're going to talk about is writing the script. Now, there's no magic recipe when it comes to writing scripts. You've probably seen a ton of them now over the internet, movie scripts, comic book scripts. Some comic books actually publish their scripts in the back as like an aid for people who want to understand how to create comics. But for me, there's no 100% way of writing a script. For me, writing the script is simple. Excluding the front page there. For me, all it takes is writing down my ideas. It always starts off in dot form for me, building up each page. So I will write a page first and describe to myself what's going to happen in that page. And I will do as many pages as I need to until that story is finished, or at least to a point that I'm happy with. For this, for example, this is the script for Monkey Junk Chapter 1. As you can see, it's already got some notes and stuff on here. So this is actually the third draft, which is now the final draft as I'm creating the comic book. But what I tend to do, like I said, is I'll write down every page rather than every panel and what all the characters are saying. I will just write down a nice blurb of what needs to happen on that page, and I'll do that for the whole story. Then I'll come back and then I'll script out each page as I see fit. However many panels I need, then what the characters are saying, and I'll do that all the way through. Next to that, I will then reprint that out, go through it with a fine tooth comb, so to speak, and I will edit everything. One of the tricks that I do when I'm doing the script is I'll actually read it to myself, whether it's in my head or whether I say it out loud, just to get a feeling of whether the actual dialogue that the characters are saying makes sense. So this isn't the be-all or end-all of how I write scripts. Sometimes in the past, especially when I was drawing How to Make a Friend, when I drew that script, well, there was technically no script for that story. When I did that book, it had no words. It was a wordless book, and for those of you who don't know, I'll show you guys right now. This is How to Make a Friend. It's a 100% silent comic. It has no words. It's purely driven by the artwork to let the reader understand what the story is. When I put this together, all I did was I drew the thumbs for the story and I wrote a few notes, just so I knew personally, when it came to drawing the book, what needed to be shown. So whether the emotions of what the characters needed to show, or some certain aspect of what needed to be in the background to make sense to the storyline. But there was no script for this one. It was purely just thumbnailed and then drawn, and that's how I did it. And it actually came out quite well. People really liked the story, and that's another thing too. With this script, for me, there's maybe a slight description, but no general description of what actually happens in the comic itself, apart from what the people are saying. There might be a light description of where they are and whatnot, but in my head I already know what needs to be done. So if you're writing a script that's going to be going to an artist who's then going to be drawing the comic book for you, you might want to think about adding in what elements of those panels or on the pages that artist needs to incorporate to make sure that the storytelling is doing what you originally planned when you came up with the idea or wrote the script. So there's no right or wrong way to write a script. Just do it how you feel comfortable doing it, and do bear in mind if it is going to another artist, make sure that you add in the proper descriptions and whatnot, so they understand what they're going to be drawing. But when it comes to writing the script for yourself, or for me at least, just having a very basic idea of where the characters are and writing down what they're saying works great. And before I wrap up on talking about scripts, I want to mention that there is no limit on how many revisions you can do. You can do 10, 20 revisions if you really find it necessary to make sure that that story is right. Try not to overdo it and just revision after revision after revision. You'll just get stuck in the trap and you'll never get this comic created. But try and make sure that story is solid. But for me, because I'm writing for myself and I know what I'll be drawing, I find it a lot easier to write my story down, and it doesn't take me any more than 2 or 3 drafts to make sure that the story is perfect before I move into the drawing itself. Okay, so you've got your script done. You want to move into the thumbnails, you want to start drawing the comic book. Before we get to all of that, we need to start considering character design. Now, character design is going to take you a while, possibly. For some people, it's generally quite easy. They might have already come up with the characters and that's what sparked their ideas. For others, they probably just have the ideas and they haven't drawn the characters yet. And drawing the characters can be a really, really fun process if you let it. But it can also be quite long and tedious. I like to experiment with different character designs. For example, Monkey Junk, one of the ideas that I had for Chris P. Bacon was that he was going to be a pig. Now, he's actually loosely based off Oolong from Dragon Ball Z, or for anyone who's watched the show, and probably recognises the fact that he is. But coming up with the costume design and the type of personality that he is was really tough for me to put together. Originally when I drew him, he was just a completely naked pig because I didn't feel like he needed clothes. To the point where I thought, okay, now he's going to have this jacket, he's got a gun holster, he has a laser pistol, and he's a bit of a badass kind of character. Developing that character really helped me also create the script too. So the character design process doesn't necessarily have to be at this point at the end before you move into actually making the comic. It can be at any point in the creation process, and I do tend to do a lot of sketching in my sketchbooks as well, just to try and develop ideas and see how those ideas can merge with the script that I'm working on, or even just the dot points when I'm writing down my ideas. But it's great to get these ideas down, because once you start moving into actually drawing the comic, it will make it a lot easier. You will become familiar with the characters, and it'll also be easier to show that emotion and write the story too, as I do find myself sometimes rewriting things as I'm actually drawing the comic book, because it does evolve in my head as I'm going. I try not to go too far off the beaten path, but it does happen, and growing with those characters helps me do that in a much better way. Because my main goal when creating comics is I want readers to relate to the characters. I want readers to develop an emotion for the characters. So if something bad happens to the character, I want the reader to feel sad for them. Or if something really exciting happens, I want the reader to be happy for them. So really getting to know those characters that you're developing in this universe that you're creating is such a great tool. In light of doing all your character design as well, do consider that you maybe want to start developing the environments. If you're just doing it in real world, it might become a lot easier for you, but if you're doing a story that's set in space, or set on another planet, or in another universe where things are different and people live under the water, or whatever it is, you might want to start discovering what those elements are and what that world's going to look like before you move into the drawing process. Because if you start drawing your comic with no prior knowledge of the world they're living in, aside from what's in your head, it might become very difficult for you to draw, and it might take you a much longer time. And this can also really slow down the process of creating your comic too, because you'll be stuck in a rut and you'll get discouraged and you might stop. And that's not what we want. So try and be as prepared as possible before it comes to actually making the comic in this whole creation process that we're talking about. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Hopefully some of this advice helped you guys in wanting to create your comics. Hopefully it gives you a kick up the bum that you need to get started, or hopefully it gets you wanting to come up with some ideas. So hopefully you go out there and get yourself inspired and come up with a fantastic idea for a comic that you might never have thought of otherwise. For those of you who are creating comics, maybe you got something out of this for the next comic that you're going to work on, or maybe you're still in the idea phase and you had a bit of trouble getting into the script, and maybe this helped you. If it did, please let me know. I'd love to hear how you guys are learning and growing from these videos, and if you are taking anything from it, because that's what I want to do, is I want to help you guys and I want to grow with you as well. Obviously I'm still learning, as you know, and Monkey Junk is going to be a long learning process for me, as it's an ongoing comic, so I'm going to be constantly writing scripts for new chapters. I'm going to be constantly playing with panel ideas and adding new characters, adding different environments. For this story in particular, there's going to be lots of different universes, so it's really going to push my boundaries as designing worlds and designing characters goes, because I'm really going to have to be creative with this. Anyway, I'm going to stop babbling. Hopefully this helped you guys out a little bit, or a lot, or somewhere in the middle, but I'm going to leave you alone. Thank you guys for watching today's video. I really appreciate all the views and all the likes and all the comments. It's great hearing from you guys, whether it's just a hello or a thank you or a advice or even your own suggestions. And again, please, if you have any suggestions or ideas or different ways that you create comics in the beginning, please chuck them down in the comments and we can discuss this in future videos as well. My name's Chris. I will catch you guys in the next video. Please, if you haven't already, consider checking out my Patreon, where I'm now uploading Monkey Junk once a week. I would like to continue further with the story, so the more support I can get, the more of the story I can give to you guys every week, and get this comic finished and into your hands hopefully one day. So, thank you all again, and I'll catch you all later. Goodbye.